Hello, I'm Dean Sinceris, my wife, HollyKem,
Hi, guys.
and we are here today to talk about Uvalde
Mm.
and how to deal with tragic trauma. As certainly the town of Uvalde is going through a whole process of traumatic trauma and grief. The state of Texas, so are we as a country. But Holly Kim and I have felt like there's many things we could talk about. We wanted to talk about the three important phases that you need to go through in order to really heal from trauma, tragedy, sudden loss of a loved one. And we've done that for over 30 years. I mean, I can remember we had a family member who lost her husband very suddenly, had a number of kids, none of them were teenagers. And, we did the best we could to help her walk through the process of healing and helping the kids as best we can. We've had clients over the years. We specifically, I remember helping a family who lost two siblings in a sudden automobile accident and helping their family really get their family back by learning to grieve together, learning to work through that. And so today we wanted to share with you things that we have learned. And perhaps, you may have not experienced a massacre like happened in Uvalde, but many of you out there have experienced, like we have, the sudden loss of a loved one. And we go through this process. So we just want to recognize that. We want to help you understand the things that need to you go through. And even if the sudden loss happened years ago, you could still be in a process of healing.
Mhm.
And so we just want to encourage you today, help you walk through that process and get into that.
Yeah, and
Go ahead.
the other part about it too is, we're all watching this trauma and this tragedy. So there's a piece to that as well. The fear that that brings to our children and ourselves, bringing our kids to school and dropping them off. Um, so as a country, we're also grieving and we're traumatized as well by seeing this and it's not on the same level, but it definitely brings up a lot of fear for us all.
Yeah. Before we get into the three phases that need to go through in order to really heal, I wanted to just recognize and honor, the two school teachers in Uvalde who died, who were shot. Here's a number of the children. There's more, but here's the pictures of some of the children that passed away. And we want to really right now ask God's blessing
Yes.
upon the city of Uvalde, upon the family members, upon the school, upon the everybody that's involved, the
Yeah,
first
first responders.
responders, the state of Texas, and certainly our nation. And so right now we ask the Lord's peace and
Yes.
presence to descend upon them now. And we also ask that for you, if you're struggling with some type
Yeah.
of grief that you're dealing with that's still lodged in your heart, we ask for the Lord's blessing to be upon that right now. And so let's get into the phases, or the three phases of things you need to understand in order to help you get through. The first is to understand and validate the natural grief process.
Mhm.
There's a grief process that you go through whenever you have a traumatic loss or any type of significant loss. And Holly Kim will speak about that process in a second. And you need to understand what that natural healing process is. Just as you if you had a cut on your arm and your body started doing certain things to naturally heal that cut, we also have been made emotionally to go through a process to heal. And that healing process we call the grief process.
The truth is that this is the way your body, your emotions, your mind, everything flows. Now, like I said, it's not one, two, three, four, five. what happens is you'll go into denial, then you'll get angry, and then you'll hit pain, then you'll go back to anger, and then you'll go to bargaining, then you go back to shock. And it takes a lot of graphing like that. Like you go to one, and that one, and that one, and that one. You go like this until you've hit enough of the pain to where you can breathe with some acceptance that this is where we're at. Like this is real, this is truth, this has happened to us. So knowing that, for me, knowing the grief process, that this is natural, this is the way I was made, this is what is going to happen to me, is where then I can accept the movement. Now the problem is that, like for Dean and I, we've had a loss. We're not going to be at the same stage at the same time.
Right.
And that's like when you lose a child, that like 85% get a divorce. And the reason why is because we get in a different part. Like he could be in denial and I could be in anger. I could be in bargaining, he could be in pain. I could be in pain, he can be in denial. So what happens is we start to trigger one another, and we just can't handle each person's different movement where they are in the process.
Yeah.
And the goal there is to embrace each other in those processes, even though it's going to trigger us to be in more pain. But we are in pain, and we need to get that out of us, because if we don't, we'll hurt ourselves.
Yeah, it's so important for a couple to learn to grieve together.
Yes, to grieve together, exactly.
Because the grief is going to be there, and it's either going to be something that you work together in, and it's going to bring you closer, or it's going to be something you work independently, and you play out the grief on each other, and that's what causes the separation that happens. Yeah, we got it fixed.
Okay.
So it causes the separation to where they end up go to the corners. Grief is just so intense that we need a lot of love and care in order to work through it. And so, as HollyKem was describing so well, there's a whole natural process. You need to understand the process. You need to have people validate that process for you. Say it's okay for you to be angry. It's okay for you to feel guilty. It's okay for you to just have a broken heart, sadness. We're going to love you through it. We're going to coach you through it. And as you do that, then you start to move through the healing process. I also want to just mention the fact that denial is a very important part of the process. Yeah. Look, a lot of the Uvalde is in shock right now. You know, some are grieving in other stages, but many people are just in shock. And sometimes the mistake that's made, especially with kids, is that they say, oh, they seem to be handling it so well. And they may not be handling it so well. They may be just in the shock phase. And I promise you, they're going to come out of that, and you're going to need to deal with the other phases.
So it's way better to sit and to continuously have a time to talk about it. It's one thing to get help, and we know that they're offering help, but in any trauma is that you want to sit and have a space and a time where that is blocked out. It can be 30 minutes where you block out and everybody gets to talk about it from the last time we talked about it.
Yeah. So second phase that's very important is to increase the emotional support system around people that have experienced tragic trauma. And what that means is that they're going through what I call emotional ICU. And what is emotional ICU? ICU, when you go through ICU as an individual, you have some type of trauma to your body, and you're actually in what? Intensive care. There's a whole process where you have 24/7 nurses, doctors, round the clock care for you, responding to your every need, physical need, so that your body will begin to heal from the trauma. Well, when you compare that to an emotional trauma, then you see that an individual is in intensive care. And what they need is a really strong community to come around them, to love them, to support them, to allow that person to not function like they normally do function, and to allow a process of intensity of care around them. So what are some examples of intensive care? Well, certainly a loving family. You need to increase time with those that love. It could be grandparents, it could be uncles and aunts, it could be other family members that are capable of giving love. And you want to make sure you spend lots of time, allow your loved ones who have experienced tragic trauma to be with them. Professional counseling services can be helpful. In this case, school support services. Certainly advocate healthy religious organizations, get involved with whatever programs they have, meet with the spiritual leaders, medical professionals, and using the resources that medical professionals have. And generally, most towns, states, cities have certain social services that are available for grief. So you just have to increase the intensity. You need to increase the time and allow yourself and those that have been impacted by this to receive the love that they deserve. Huh?
Yeah. I mean, the way to get through anything is love.
Yeah.
And, love looks like something. Love looks like a meal. Love looks like sitting and watching a TV show. Love looks like a walk. Love looks like something. So you work with, at that moment, what it is that that person needs. It could be a hug, holding their hand. It could be, drawing pictures, especially if it's children. They can draw pictures of what they saw, what they're afraid of. Talking to them about what happens when they go to bed. What are they seeing? What are they hearing? And let them process that. So if they process that and you love on them and listen to them and hug them, then when they can go to sleep, they can rest. It's not just constantly chatter in their head. We have chatter in our head because we don't have someone to love what we're saying out loud, that we're hearing or seeing in our mind.
Yeah, and these are not all the community support services. If you experience any support services that were helpful to you that aren't in there, share it with us in the chat so we can share that with people. But there's a lot of different community services that are available, and we just need to come together and show the love to each other that's needed, because as HollyKem said, love is what heals.
Yeah. And, I was just thinking about, I just had a thought that if you're watching this show, you can, and your school teacher, you can have your school children in those classes write a letter to the school, to the children that are there. Every teacher can write a letter to another teacher that was at that school. Every child that's in summer camp could write a letter. If you're a parent, you can write a letter as a family, and send love to these people. Because if they ended up with 1 million letters, can you imagine to think that they were not alone through this?
Yeah, that's good.
Thank you, honey.
Yeah. And the third phase that's very important is you need to lean on whatever faith foundation is available.
Yes. I was just thinking, every church, I missed that. Every church could have everybody write a letter, bring it to the church, and we mail it out.
Yeah.
We're good at bringing, churches, we're always good at bringing food. We're always good at bringing water. We meet the people's needs in our communities and others. This is a great mission field for churches.
Yeah. Yeah. And when you say whatever faith foundation you have, what we mean is that, look, most of us are given some type of foundation in faith. Some people aren't, unfortunately. And do you know that there's certain times in our lives that we can deny that that's important?
Right.
And we can deny that the questions of life and death, or not, you can deny addressing those straight on. But when you deal with tragedy like this, you begin to ask those questions.
Definitely.
And when you begin to ask those questions, you need to have a place to find some answers. There's a desperation that happens, that happened after 9/11. people were filling up churches and synagogues and mosques and, all the different religious institutions. Yes. People were going to those places because they were asking these questions.
Yes.
And, I was noticing the president addressed the nation. Now, the president very rarely, or any politician would very rarely start off an addressing a nation with prayer or saying that, that we need to turn or ask God's blessing. And so that's like forbidden. It's separation of church and state, and it's a big deal. And yet when there's tragedy,
that's right,
even the president has permission to say, we need to be praying for these people. We need to ask God's presence upon them.
And the media too.
They're
all talking about praying for these
media
people.
that presents situations like, oh, we need to separate church and state and this and that. And then they'll say, they're in our thoughts and our prayers and so forth. And even those that deny and want to not have that as part of the culture, they turn to that in times of tragedy.
Exactly.
We have noticed over the years that individuals that deal with tragedy and they have a strong faith move so much faster through the grief process than those without. In fact, if you have no belief in strong spiritual belief in God, afterlife, and so forth, tragic trauma often leads to despair, hopelessness, intensive depression, intensive anxiety, and it causes lots and lots of problems. And that faith foundation is so important, and that our encouragement is increase that, allow that, encourage that, help people expand that in their lives, because ultimately that's where they'll find their answers.
Yeah, because you're dealing with you're dealing with somebody that, no matter what you label, the two 18-year-olds in the last week, or 2 weeks, that have murdered on a mass level, something's wrong with them. Something, I don't care what you label it, something's missing.
Yeah.
And that's, for me, that's the answer. We need to find out what's missing in our human race that we need to fulfill and fix.
Yeah. So allow yourself to expand, exercise your faith, whatever faith you have, increase it. And that's the third part. That's a very important part of the healing process.
Yes.
We have also a couple of resources that are really helpful. This is a great resource. We have a link in the description. It's called a Grief Observed. It's a short book by C.S. Lewis. It's his memoirs of after his wife suddenly died, and he really had to grapple with the loss of his wife. He had, just questioning his faith, questioning his relationship with God, and then really coming out of the other side a stronger and more powerful person. And I think that that's the challenge,
right?
Is that it's going to make or break you in a sense. Yeah. I think it's going to break everybody at first, right?
It does break us, but where does it break us to?
Right. Do we stay broken?
Right.
Or do we go through the process that we come out the other side a better person, a better man, a better woman? And that's what our hope is for you, is that when you come out of the other side of whatever you're experiencing, you come out stronger, more powerful. You have a toolbox to help others from the same pain and trauma. Oftentimes it's said that your purpose is found in your pain. That's when you work through your pain, that's when you get hold of your purpose, and that becomes that which you give back. So C.S. Lewis's book, A Grief Observed, I certainly would recommend that to you if you want to go deeper into grappling with healing from a tragic loss. And the other resource that we have for you is 2 videos that we did is trauma triggers, where we go into what is trauma, how we get triggered, our past traumas get triggered in our brain, the whole process of healing from that. And then also a 6-minute video that goes into greater depth on healing from loss, the grief process, and what the natural process is. We have links in the description, and also you can click on the screen. And so go to those right now and keep the process going, delve deeper in this subject. And we just speak blessing over the people of Uvalde, again, over you. And we thank you for tuning in today. And we say,
Have a voice.